Well, what's most remarkable in all of these reports, and we have some veterans, I won't call them oldsters in the room, we have some veterans, they will remember back 2 decades ago, you couldn't get Amnesty International to say one critical word about Israel. Everybody knew that Israel was engaged in widespread torture of Palestinian detainees that had been copiously documented. When Amnesty International put out its volume Torture in the 1980s, they refused to even use the word torture when it came to Israel. And now you have a quite remarkable turn of events. I see in the audience Abdin Jabara, an old friend and comrade. Can you raise your hand? Okay. And Abdin will remember there was a time when the only ones who dared criticize Israel, and after a lot of internal dissension, was the National Lawyers Guild. So now I'll tell Abdin a funny story. Of all the reports that came out after the Gaza massacre, the most tepid and the most cautious was the National Lawyers Guild. The most they would say is there's prima facie evidence, on the face of it evidence, that Israel committed significant violations of international law. But all the other reports, including Human Rights Watch, said Israel committed war crimes. Amnesty International, it barely had enough space to list all the war crimes that Israel committed. That's literally the case. And the Dugard Committee, and people have to keep in mind, Jean Dugard is a very respected mainstream legal scholar. The Dugard Committee went so far as to accuse Israel of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and even entertained, it didn't accept, but entertained the idea that Israel was guilty of genocide. Well, that's a vast change in mainstream, what we can call enlightened public opinion. Now, what does that mean for all of us? I think it has important significance. And the significance, in my opinion, is this. Many of you are familiar with Gandhi's writings and his preachings about nonviolence. But Gandhi's preachings about nonviolence had 2 aspects to them. The first aspect, everybody knows, that you have to practice nonviolence for various reasons. Although Gandhi had a lot of qualifications about practicing nonviolence. In my opinion, time doesn't allow me, there is grounds in Gandhi for supporting the rocket attacks on Israel, which preceded the attack. I don't have time to go into that during my prepared remarks, but I'll be happy to do so if you question me on it. But the more important point about Gandhi is, he said that it's not enough to have innocence of means, that is, to practice nonviolence. You also have to have innocence of ends, which basically means that your goal has to also be seen as legitimate by the whole of humankind, or most of humankind. If people don't see your goal as legitimate, then no matter how much nonviolence you practice, it's not going to convince people to act. I see Rosalind Pachevsky in the audience, who's written a lot, I think, if my memory serves, on the abortion issue. And everybody understands that if pro-life persons were to go down in front of abortion clinics, and if they were to even go so far as to starve themselves to death, that's not going to change the mind of pro-choice people. They may feel a little sad that they starve themselves to death, maybe, but it's not going to change their opinion. You can only move public opinion to act if they agree on the legitimacy of your goal. If they accept the legitimacy of your goal, then nonviolence has real possibilities, potential, and prospects. Gandhi was once asked, why do you make public campaigns against alcoholism, but you don't make public campaigns against smoking? And his answer was, because smoking is respectable. People accept it. And you will never get them to act against a social ill unless there's a pre-existing consensus saying that ill is wrong. And now our great opportunity is that finally, after a long, hard struggle, the goals the Palestinians have set are now seen as legitimate, enlightened public opinion, as expressed whether it be in the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, the human rights organizations. Enlightened public opinion is on the side of Palestinians. It's not any longer on the side of Israel, which means there's real possibilities for a Gandhian strategy of nonviolence to work, because you can have the innocence of means, that is to say nonviolence, and the innocence of ends. What the Palestinians want is seen by the whole of enlightened public opinion to be legitimate, reasonable, not extremist. And one of those legitimate aims is to end the siege, the illegal siege of Gaza. And that's the key word, illegal siege of Gaza. Amnesty International has called it a flagrant violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Human Rights Watch has called it a serious violation of international law. That's just a euphemism for saying it's a war crime. And we have the possibility now of mobilizing international public opinion around ending the siege. And that's